12Stone, I'm excited to have this conversation with you because God is doing some uniquely powerful things. This is David Grant. He's going to talk with us in a few minutes, but let me set it up, all right? This is the pandemic COVID season that has interrupted everything. And yet, as we talked this past weekend and in the teaching, God is very opportunistic right now, isn't he, David? God, we think, well, what is God doing? Well, now we're physically out of buildings, but God is opening doors, and we are a church of one experience and two expressions. And one of those expressions is 12Stone Live, and that's what we're used to, being in the room. But the other expression is 12Stone Home. And when we go to 12Stone Home, we're saying God's opening up a door. And 12Stone Home is more than just I'm online and watching it on my own.
Right.
This is far more envisioning. So let's talk about it, David. What is this whole envisioning of 12Stone Home?
Well, just think about everything you do in the building, right? So you come to the building, the church building, you worship together. You may connect in community a little bit. You may have a small group that meets in the church. You probably hang out, or used to hang out at least, in the foyers and stuff like that.
Right.
And then you think about, how do we actually impact our region and our neighborhoods and the world, all that kind of stuff. Everything you can do in a building, a church building, you can actually also do in your home. And so the vision around this is basically, hey, how do we take church home? How do we take everything that can happen in the building and maybe expand it, engage it in a different way, and actually do it in the home setting?
And maybe this is temporary for some of you.
Yeah.
You're just not ready to come back in a building, and this could end up being many weeks or a few months. Maybe for some, God's resetting church, and both of these things can happen at the same time, and this becomes your permanent experience. It happens in a home, but you're part of the church family, and you live stream, or you stream the worship and the teaching, and now you're in worship, you're in community, you're making an impact through your group. This is the envisioning that we think is part of God's next and new for what he's doing, not only through 12Stone, we think it's across the nation, across the world. So let's play that out a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, you've been doing this for a while. Talk about your 12Stone Home, the group that you're doing, and how that plays out.
I have some incredible neighbors. They're primarily my neighbors who I've met along the way, whether at a restaurant or at the pool or in the parking lot. And basically, and you know this about yourself, a lot of you are spiritually unresolved, and you're walking through this, you're curious about it, and so we gather on Sundays. And the reality is, it's a very unique group for us because of the neighborhood that I live in and kind of the people that I'm drawn to be honest with. We know that's not going to be true of every 12Stone home. It could be that there's 12Stoners that meet as a small group and they kind of connect each other, and it feels very different than what happens in downtown Duluth. In my apartment complex, because of the size of the apartment, it has its own unique flavor to it, and every single one of these is going to be unique.
If we say 12Stone Home, one expression of that could be the one that you're doing, which tends to have spiritually unresolved people, connections, relationships you're building. They come in, it happens on a Sunday morning. Right. So you've picked a time.
Yes, we do.
You've picked a place. You guys pick a meal, don't you?
We do. It's going back and forth. Bagel 101 or Maple Street. It's either one. They're both
both
incredible.
Good.
Yeah.
And in your experience, tell me what happens during that.
Yeah, so we have a TV in the den, and we use YouTube, and so we don't get to watch it live because some of us sleep later than others.
You know what I'm talking about. You can pick your time.
It is. You pick your time, and so we jump on the TV. We worship together, which is very distinct for us. A lot of our breakfast eating happens during worship because we're just not ready to stand up and worship that way yet. We might get there, but we enjoy the music, and then we kind of enter into the teaching. And so the great thing about doing 12Stone Home is I can push pause anytime I want to. You know, there's power in the remote. So if Kevin here says something that I'm like, you know what, I really probably need to explain that, I can push pause and say, hey, let me tell you what Kevin's really trying to say. And they always enjoy that.
Which you would be pushing the remote all the time, man. Stop.
Yeah. And so we do engage with the teaching, and you can't really do that in a building, in a room when you're preaching. That would be kind of rude. If they said, hey, Kevin, wait a second. So we
I don't know, we might get to that someday.
we might. So we do it in the space, and we have conversations. And at the end, we actually try to unpack the teaching a little bit, ask questions of what do you believe is the main takeaway for you in this teaching? What's something you can do to take a next step towards Jesus, trusting that he's going to help us do that? And then finally, is there somebody you know that needs to hear the hope of who Jesus is as a result of what you heard? So we have, most of our people are spiritually, they're seekers, they're kind of seeking after God, those kind of things. We have other people who are believers, and that's kind of our third expression that we're thinking that we could have too. There's a third kind of church, or a 12-stone home that's all up together.
So one expression is the way you're doing it.
Yep.
There's other groups that are 12-stone home, and they have 12-stoners with them.
Right.
So you can think about that. Maybe you're a 12-stoner and you've been doing 12-stone online alone, or
Right.
maybe with your family, and you realize this season is a time to gather a small group together. Pick a home, pick a time, maybe a meal if you want. That
Yeah,
certainly helps
yeah.
with community.
It does. A piece of this we really hope that happens in the future is that if we're having church in our neighborhoods, then actually we'll start to care more about our neighborhoods, and we'll start to explore how do we bless our friends and our neighbors, and that expands to coworkers and classmates, all those kind of things. But we're hoping as we worship together, as we engage with the teaching, as we build community and we begin to love each other in a different way and know each other in a different way, that will spill over into our neighborhoods. So actually our neighborhood's going to be blessed because of the way that God's blessing us in our community.
Wow. And to no surprise, who ultimately can figure out all that God is doing and will do? But we had one church in one location, and we had a central regional gathering. And then we began to move out into communities with campuses. And that's powerful, and God's using it, and he'll continue to use it. And who knows how and when we all come back watching this COVID thing. But it would be like God to push that further into neighborhoods, where the expression and experience of church can happen right there in the neighborhood, in the home. Maybe you 12-stone, or maybe you can start a 12-stone home experience.
Right.
Maybe get your small group together, go pilot this thing.
Right.
And let's just confess, David, we don't have all the details figured out. We don't need to. This is happening raw and real and in the moment.
It's fun.
But here's what we can do. You can text, and you're going to get this text, right? Not like there.
I am.
You can text home to 37748. Text home to 37748. Give the information, and you'll help support them in this.
Yeah, so here's what we love. If you've already been hosting one of these, if you've basically been attending one, we'd like to know about that, because we think maybe there's some things we can do to support you, pray for you, encourage you, but we also think maybe there's some things that you're learning that would help us as we're in this kind of raw building stage.
Everybody gets better.
Yeah, or if you want to be a part of one, if you want to lead one out, if you have a neighbor who has a bigger house and then maybe they're better hosts than you might be, hey, text us as well, and we'd love to help you get one started and see what this becomes.
This is going to be powerful. So, church, let's encourage all of us. Rethink maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll end up back in buildings and gatherings and worship that'll be profound, and we'll time that with what's going on with COVID, but maybe, and likely, God's building something profound that will reset how church is being done alongside this whole vision and ministry.
What if God is using this season it was in the sermon, right, to wake up the church?
Yep,
to,
shake up the church, wake up the church, come on.
And so we think that could be happening. And so to be on the front end of that's incredibly exciting.
So we will bring more equipping, leadership, organization to this as we progress, but you can get in on the front end. These are exciting days. 12-stone, looking forward to seeing what God's going to do.